Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Meeting Protocol Monthly Podcast, where we chat with some of the coolest people in the biz and bring you useful and relevant information about what is happening in the world of meeting planning. I'm Dora Figueredo, the head of events and education here at Meeting Protocol, coming to you from New Jersey as always. I hope that someday I can come to you from a really fun, exotic place like Mexico, but New Jersey it is for the day. Okay, event planners, show of hands. How many of us have told people what we do only to be met with, that sounds so fun, so you plan parties and stuff? Or better yet, who's been told by a manager or coworker who's never planned events before that your job must be so easy because they planned their wedding and it really wasn't so much work? There's little that's more maddening than pretty much being told that your job isn't that valuable and it's not hard work because they show up to your extremely well-planned event and have no idea the blood, sweat, and tears, literally, that went into ensuring their experience is absolutely flawless. And so today I am super delighted to introduce you all to Sara Gorlick, a 15-year event pro who has been recognized as a BizBash Corporate Planner of the Year, as well as a recipient of the Event Solutions Spotlight Award for Corporate Event Planner of the Year. She recently published Lucky Box Cutter, which you should all go out and read immediately. I actually really, truly love the book. And as soon as I read it, I was like, I need to have her on. So I'm so glad to have her here today. And in a market where most books about event planning are more like textbooks, Sara's book is a really refreshing affirmation about why we love and sometimes love to hate our jobs. So thank you so much, Sara, for joining us. Tell us where you're joining from today and the quick background of what got you into event planning.
Sure. Thanks, Dora. Hi, everybody. I'm coming to you today from Connecticut. You can see it's a little bit of a windy day behind me. And we were just talking before the recording that I'm a remote worker. I have been for pre-pandemic for probably around 10 years also by now. But I got into event planning over 15 years ago now. So time is flying by. I still sometimes feel like I just graduated college, but it's been a long time. And I didn't necessarily set out to be an event planner. I graduated from college. I majored in communications. I didn't know what I wanted to do for a career. And I think it's a pretty common story of just applying to a whole bunch of different types of jobs. And a lot of the job opportunities that were coming back were more sales positions and commission based, something that didn't appeal to me. And I had been co-oping or interning at a nonprofit healthcare organization at the time. And after my internship, my last semester of college, I was working in their customer service department, just answering phones and helping customers. And a event coordinator position had opened right around the time I was graduating. So I applied, and because I had already had that experience with the nonprofit, I got the job. And I said, why not? Let's do it. And then very quickly, I talk about this in my book, I was thrown into the fire. And one of my first events was a 1,500 person conference. And you had mentioned in your opening, you love your job and love to hate it. It was definitely one of those experiences. It was an amazing experience. It was a very tough experience, but I was hooked on event planning. And I had an amazing mentor that told me you can make a career out of this. And that I really needed to hear, like, oh, here's a pathway within event planning. And now over 15 years later, here I am. And I have continued to do corporate events, nonprofit and for-profit events ever since.
That's amazing. I love how it goes very quickly from, yeah, I'm going to take this job to now it's been 15 years.
Yeah, exactly. The time flew by, and it's amazing. Like I feel really grateful to be an event planner because it's always changing and it's so fast paced, which is probably why it's gone by so quickly.
Right. There's never a boring moment in this industry.
Never. Mm-hmm.
Well, I would love to start by talking about the value of event planners. You mentioned in your book exactly what I touched on in the intro, which is people, which includes our managers, sometimes don't really see our job or industry as being real work. You laid out a few tips in the book, but I would love to hear about how you've affirmed your value to the people that you work with.
Yeah, I think that, over my 15-year career as an event planner, showing your value is really important, and you have to be your own advocate. That's one area that I've realized a lot over the years is you have to show people that you're working with and your stakeholders, everything that's going on, behind the scenes, because it's really easy, for attendees to come to an event or anyone to come to an event and say, oh, that went so great. And when it was so easy and things went so well, it seems like maybe it was easy to plan, and not seeing, those nights where event planners are inevitably up until 10, 11 p.m., midnight or later, finalizing details because things switched to the last minute, or these mini fires that we put out on the lead up to the event and then at the event as well. And so I think that figuring out how to concisely communicate the value of the event is really important. So, numbers, of course, data is always really, really well received. And then figuring out, how to make some anecdotes of the event into data as well. So I think it's okay to like make up equations sometimes and say, these attendees provide a value in this way, and event planners can assign their own number to it. So it's putting numbers, to something that's more anecdotal, and then you communicate that to your stakeholders. I'm making up this equation, but if we were going to put this into numbers, this is what it could look like. So you have to put some imagination behind it at times. And then also keeping track of wins as you go. Like, I found this to be really helpful. In my budgeting spreadsheets always are, and it's even at just a separate Excel, I'll put down negotiations like, oh, I saved $500 here, $10,000 here. The AV didn't work, so we ended up getting a $5,000 rebate. Even negotiating into a hotel contract, one room per 45, you get comped. That is standard in a hotel contract, but if you have a room block, that could be $16,000. And so keeping a running tab of that, and then at the end, it really adds up. And it's like, not getting the Starbucks Frappuccino every day. It's $5 a day, but it adds up to thousands of dollars at the end of the year. And here's a savings of $150,000 for the company. So I think being really vigilant about noting those small wins, and then creating like a really big masterpiece at the end of showing your value, is one way to start.
Yeah, people don't necessarily realize that we are also data wizards. Like, we have to be really knowledgeable about what is important to capture, and how to communicate that in a way that's valuable for the organization.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We're in data all day long. Right. And we've been really lucky to have a co-op every 6 months from Northeastern. So an intern, and that's been really great because, and one of the things that I always say is like, we need help with the data. It's so time consuming. So to get that assistance too is really helpful. There's just so many moving parts. It's research and tactical and strategy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. When in-house planners get tons of events piled onto them because their teams don't understand exactly how much work goes into logistics, how would you coach them to manage up, to rebalance their workload, and essentially advocate for themselves in that regard?
Yeah. So I feel like a lot of people talk about boundary setting. I mean, that's important, but it's so hard to go to your manager and say, I can't do this, I don't, but I think that, I'm thinking back to a memory that I had really early on in my career, where I was at the office at, I don't know, it was like 10 o'clock at night. And I called my mom, and it was a week out from this huge event. And I was pretty much the sole event planner on it. And I said, I don't know if I can, and I was printing tent cards. And I was like, I know, it was in my early 20s. I was like, I don't know if I can actually get it all done. Like, I don't know if there's enough time to print all the tent cards and do everything that I need to do in the next week. And so I mean, you have to ask for help. One, if there's no time to do all of it, it's really important to ask for help. But I also think to get savvy with how you plan resources. So there's, companies like, I work with Conference Direct a lot, Helms Briscoe, to help you with contracting that doesn't take away from your event budget. So that saves a ton of time with venue sourcing, hotel room blocks. Then there is there's a platform now called the Vendry, which is really helpful to save time on finding venues. Looking for internship programs. Interns can be so helpful to event planners, like with the data mining or any of the administrative tasks that are necessary for event planning and so important, but something that, an intern, you can coach them and have them figure out how to help you. And then even just on site, like in the past, I've hired task rabbits to come and help with badge stuffing on site. So I think the beauty of event planning in today's world is that there's all these micro ways that you can put budget towards helping you put on a huge event or put on more than you would normally be able to, and essentially like turn your 2 arms into like 6 arms. And so I think that's like more of like a magic way to try and save an event planner more time. And that's a great way to also to go to a supervisor and say, hey, I don't have enough time, but here's how I'm going to apply $5,000 of a budget to have the support that we need.
I love it. Such practical advice.
Yes.
One of my favorite lines in the book is, when you are on site, you should think of yourself as a crisis control manager. I'd love to hear about some crises you've managed or managed others through over your last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, so I quickly learned being an event planner means no matter how well you plan an event, things are going to go awry on site, things that you cannot predict. At my first event, it was something somewhat, it was a pretty big deal. Like the keynote speaker for 1,500 people canceled the night before. And it was my first event. And my supervisor at the time, she was the VP of operations. She was so helpful. And I remember us being in my hotel suite at like 11 o'clock at night. And she said, okay, we're going to take the breakout session that has the most amount of attendees and place them into the keynote room and make that the keynote. And then we'll have the other breakouts around it. It was such a good idea. And something that with experience, it was a quick fix, like, oh, here it is. But there's little things like a keynote speaker's eyeglass ear broke right before the event, and it was going to be on like iMag in front of thousands of people and video conference, and the glasses were falling off, and trying to find, a glass repair kit in time to, there's of course like weather issues. People can't get in because flights are canceled. One, which was just a couple years ago, we were doing an event for a few thousand people, and it was an older building in San Francisco. There was a big sign that said, do not shut this door. And someone shut the door, and it set off the fire hose in this old building in San Francisco. And the water was pouring and like flooding the floor, and they couldn't turn it off until the fire department came. And it just so happened that our keynote speaker that was supposed to be on stage in 15 minutes was standing right near it and also became soaking wet. Like the chances of that happening. So crises always happen. One of the things that I really wanted to give event planners in my book is just like the mental awareness that happens to all event planners, because I think it's so hard starting out when those things happen, because it's hard to not feel like, oh no, is it only me? Like, did I not prepare for this? But when we reframe our thinking to, oh, this is my job to now control this crisis. It's not, I can't believe I did this. It's, oh, I'm going to fix this, whatever it is, totally reframes the whole feeling of what's happening on site. And I think it's really empowering. So that I think is, the most important takeaway when it comes to crises. What about you? Do you have any that is your number one?
Yeah. My number one, I was doing an event in Chile, and my team and I were so pumped to be in Chile. We got there a couple days early. We were like setting up the venue. And the day that our attendees arrived in Santiago, it was like a 4-hour bus ride from Santiago to the venue. There was a landslide on the mountain. And so some people were already like almost there, and, they were literally on the mountain stranded. There was, miles and miles of cars behind them, because this was like one of the very few passageways between Chile and Argentina. And so like a lot of the truck deliveries and stuff that needed to go to Argentina, they were stuck there. There was fist fights. It got really dirty. We had to send somebody like walking down the mountain to like try to get people, but the landslide was crazy. Overnight, the police and the fire department cleared it, thankfully. We had to send everybody back to Santiago, and then the next day we brought them to we like had to find hotels, to
You did essentially like cancel the original plan and revamp everything.
exactly. Yeah. So we were like, okay, let's find hotels. And we were all like on our computers, like, okay, so we need rooms for 120 people. That's how many people we had on those buses. And so we were like sending people to hotels. Not everybody had cell phone service. We were trying to figure that out. Eventually the next day we did get them there. And then on the second day of the conference, there was an earthquake.
Oh my God.
Yes. So we assumed that the landslide was probably triggered by an underground tremor that then, was the earthquake later, triggered the earthquake later.
Were
Luckily,
you all together when the earthquake happened?
we were all together. We were actually, it was like post dinner. There was a bar, like dance club in this venue, in this hotel, and we were all like hanging out. It was, our after dinner plans, and there were people dancing. And at first somebody was like, they danced so much, they made that.
They're like, you're really getting into it.
Like, I don't think that was the dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we had so many people there who had never experienced an earthquake, and as far as earthquakes go, it was pretty mild. But we, the people who like saw their drawers open in their bedroom and in their hotel room and things on the
Oh my gosh, so scary.
Yeah, it was so scary for them. Luckily, everybody was okay physically. Some people were a bit shaken up emotionally, but
Yeah, I'm sure. It's amazing too, because as an event planner, it's not like when there's a natural disaster or something that impacts attendees weather-wise before they get there. It's not a job where, the attendees then are on their own. Like the event planner then all of a sudden has to figure out, how do I take care of our attendees, within this situation, even if they're not even on site yet, right? So you really take responsibility for a whole group of people, whether it's 100 people or 1,000 people within those few days.
yeah.
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 Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, whenever I've done job interviews where they ask like, what's a crisis you've managed? I'm like, I don't think that there can be any bigger crisis.
Yeah, just landslides and earthquakes.
I really hope I never experience anything crazier than that, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I hope not.
I'm going to go off script with us here a little bit. I want to actually ask you, like, what inspired you to write your book? And obviously there's not like a ton of event planning books out there that are memoirs, right? Yours kind of reads as a little bit of a manual for early stage event planners, like, people coming into their career, but also as a memoir. And so it's a lot of fun to read, because I was like, I know this feeling, I understand it. So I'd love to know, like, what brought you to write that book?
Yeah, I thought a lot about the reason I wrote it the way that I did is because I learn best through other people's stories. It's one thing to have a textbook and memorize all the details. But I just personally don't learn that way the best. And I thought, if I don't, I'm sure there's other people out there that might learn through anecdotes. And I also felt that it's just a fun way to write. And I think I'm a pretty avid reader. Like, I like to read fiction and nonfiction. And what I remember is not like the whole book, but I take these little nuggets away. And I thought, if there's just one nugget that someone could walk away from with this book because of a story, that was my goal. And then also the reason I wrote it, I was traveling all over at the time for work, and just doing a lot of global work, like 200,000 miles a year. I had a lot of time to myself and my laptop outside of work because I was on planes, and it was a creative outlet for me. But I also really just wanted to help younger event planners and people that have been in the industry for a while, as like, I'm starting to think of like box cutter as like an event planner's best friend, like someone that they can vent alongside with and be a cheerleader no matter what. Like I talked about, when like things are going wrong, like, it's okay, it's going wrong, you're still amazing, you just fix it and you move on. And I really wanted to write like an event planner's best friend for people in the industry. And I thought, if just one person reads it and they like it, then that's like a huge, wonderful, like, win for me. And it's just fun to have a little side project. So
That's great. So now post-pandemic, you're not doing so much traveling like you used to?
No, it's definitely changed. Yeah. the number of events per year have changed. And I think I saw someone who's in the industry, and he did like the event planners pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. And it was a lot just around like event planning trends in general that have changed. But I think one of them, I'm ad-libbing. It wasn't worded exactly like this, but it was like events or life, like you're all in and your whole life is like your job, changing to like event planning within like more of a balanced life. And I feel like I've seen that a lot across the industry, at least more of a topic of conversation that's much more earnest than it's been in the past. And less of like a glorification of overworking, which, when my book was written, that's a lot of what I was doing. And I think event planning, no matter what, at times is going to be overtaking. It's impossible for it not to when you get closer to an event. But trying to get a little bit more balance. And I think, post-pandemic, that's being shown in a lot of people's travel, even like for our attendees, looking at like, oh, we're going to create an experience for people, but how do we make it where it's worth their time to like leave the house? Because I think people are becoming much more discerning about like when they are going to leave and why they're going to leave.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I know it's such a common topic for us these days. Like, how many attendees are coming to your event? What's your registrations numbers?
Yeah.
Like, registration numbers have always been an issue, but now it's like even more so, right?
Oh yeah, I think so, for sure. Like, I think if you're throwing an event, sometimes the invitee list should be, maybe it was 2x your goal before. And I think right after things opened up, it was like 5x what it used to be. And now maybe it's gone down to 3.5x, but it's still definitely higher than it was before. Yeah. I also think airlines, I mean, this is a total theory, but I think airlines, because of that, are like, they're giving away. I got status on American Airlines at a pretty high rate, and I definitely did not travel enough last year. I don't know if it's because of the credit card, but they used to not do it because of the credit card. So I'm wondering, like, do they not have people traveling as much? So they're trying to give status like away now, which is great. I mean, that's a huge benefit, I guess, to us travelers that go out, but not as much as we used to.
Yeah, I live right next to a United hub, so I used to be a United status person, and now this year I'm kind of facing, United just recently changed their terms, and so I'm facing for the first time in almost 10 years not having status.
Oh no, that's terrible.
It's such a first world problem to have, but
yeah, it is. It really is. But once you get used to it, it's really difficult to let it go. Yeah. Yeah. I still call American sometimes and I say, I was executive plat for 5 years. So I was wondering if you could help me with this, like hoping like my tenure with them would carry over. It really does, but I try it anyways.
I'm curious though, like who is still flying that much? In my life, people who used to fly that much, whether they're events people or not, they just don't anymore. So I would love to see over the next couple of years what status looks like.
Yeah, I think it's going to change slowly, for sure. Yeah, I get like everything. I mean, I think everything's going to slowly start to change, and yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to close out with my usual final question. Share a memory of or experience of a super cool event that you've been a part of, either as an attendee or as a producer.
That's such a good question. I would say the coolest one, which hopefully this counts, but I was an attendee. It was probably in 2018, maybe 2017. And I went with my mom to Oprah's Live the Life You Want tour. And it was amazing. We got there, they had like a big festival outside first with like different vendors. And that was neat that they had like an extra little side event. But then that evening, it was an evening with Oprah. She was on the stage for 2 hours, just her and the microphone talking. And then the next day, she had 4 or 5 different speakers come up, and they had like Deepak Chopra doing like a group meditation with everyone for 45 minutes. And this great speaker, Rob Bell, I think Elizabeth Gilbert was there. It was so inspiring. And the reason I think I loved it. Well, I mean, I walked away from the event really feeling like lighter for like a full week. I was like, I feel like a different person after this. But I love stage production. Like I remember when TED Talks first came out many, many years ago, and it was such a different way to do keynote speakers and having people on the stage. And it was so refreshing and it resonated with so many people. And I love this like North Star, like a TED Talk or putting on a show that really carries people through post event. And that Oprah event was like the shining star of what it could be. I think about it often, and it was just a wonderful experience. So I guess anything Oprah does is wonderful, but she really, yeah, she really delivered.
Yeah, I wonder what it's like to work on Oprah's event team.
You know, it's so funny you say that. I remember watching the AV desk because it was at a big amphitheater in like San Jose. And I remember watching the AV crew that were like halfway through the show floor. And I think it was one of our main producers, and I saw her there with her headphones on. And I thought how much I would love to be there. That was like a big part of it. I was like, oh, like I would love to be behind that desk right now. Yeah.
That would have been amazing.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
Well, you are so easy to talk to. I feel like we could go on for hours.
I know, I feel the same.
But yeah, we are running out of time here. So for those who want to learn more about you, your work, your book, where can they go for more information?
So luckyboxcutter.com is where they can go to learn a bit more. And there's links directly to Amazon to purchase the ebook, and then also to Rakuten Kobo. It's on there. I think most of the people that are in Canada, I use Kobo. And then I plan to have a print version of the book up very soon on luckyboxcutter.com. I also sell custom box cutters, and I have some templates up there. I'm going to be putting more templates as well to support event planners. And then also on Instagram. So Lucky Box Cutter on Instagram, I try and put some funny posts up there from time to time to bring a little light to everyone's day. So.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Sara.
Thank you.
Time. And thanks to all of our listeners and Meeting Protocol fans for checking out this episode. Don't forget to go to meetingprotocol.org, where you can sign up for our newsletter. That includes links to all of our new podcasts, a CNP tip of the month, as well as tons of resources for everything related to meeting professionals and CNP. Thanks.